Well, hello there, everybody. This is Dale from the Precept classes in Coleman, Alabama. And I thank you for joining with us as we continue examining a course called Passing the Mantle from the Kings and Prophets series. And so we're at video number 3 of lesson 5. And this is a short little thing, but it's so important. What we see here is that Elisha, the man of God, dies. And so often in Scripture, when we see these mighty men of God, they come along, they live these lives, and all of a sudden the Lord just says, they die, and that's it. He doesn't explain a lot of times what happens. He just says here. Now with Elijah, we know that he had a sickness because of our previous time together earlier in the chapter. We saw that Joash had come down to visit with him, but he dies and he is buried. Well, within that same verse, another little vignette, another little story is picked up, and we see that there are marauding bands of Moabites about. I just love that little phrase. Well, apparently one day there was a funeral procession. Some folks were going along about to bury a man. We don't know who these people were. We don't know who the man was. But they saw one of these marauding bands of Moabites. And so they wanted to escape. They didn't want to encounter them. So they took the dead body and they threw him in the grave. They threw him into Elisha's grave. And the second that that dead man touched the bones of Elijah, the dead man was revived and stood up on his feet. Like, just think about that for a moment. Can you imagine what must the men have thought that saw that? What must the dead man have thought? I wonder what he could remember. I wonder what he could say to them. There's just so many questions about this that we simply don't know. All we know is what we see within this right here. And you may say, well, why in the world is this account even in Scripture? And there's a lot of, understandings about it and theories and things like that. But I think it really is the proof of the power of God. That it was the power of God upon the life of Elisha, not Elisha himself, okay, not him that had power, but it was the power of God to such a degree that even if God wanted to move through dead bones, he could. And so right after that, we pick up this other account, a continuation of the story. Hazael was the king of Aram, and he had oppressed Israel all the days of Jehoahaz. But he had oppressed them, but the Lord was gracious to Israel. He had compassion upon Israel, and he turned to them because of his covenant that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He wouldn't allow them to be destroyed in any way, and he would not cast them from his presence. But he would allow Israel to be oppressed because Israel was not walking in obedience to the Lord. And so the next thing we see is that Hazael, the king of Aram, that he dies. And his son, Ben-Hadad, becomes king. And that's interesting because Hazael had killed a guy named Ben-Hadad to become king, and then he named his son after him, apparently. And so then we see that Joash, the son of Jehoahaz, took from Ben-Hadad the cities which Hazael had taken. And 3 times Joash, which is the same guy as Jehoahaz, remember how these names were used synonymously quite often. And remember, it can get a little confusing because there were kings from the north and the south with the same name. But 3 times he defeated him. Remember those 3 arrows, how he shot those 3 arrows into the ground? There's something there for us to learn, for us to glean right there. Anyway, take these things before the Lord. Read over that scripture again and say, Lord, what is it you're wanting to say right here? Sometimes we feel like we're dead. Sometimes we feel like that we're no better than a bag of bones. Perhaps the Lord can move through us in the like manner that he did here. Again, I'm Dale, and I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.